So, hey, guess what? I know I promised that I would have an update every time I do Sports Central, part of the Closing Tag Network, on the Detroit Pistons' quest to avoid infamy. And since the last time that I reported on the Pistons, they have managed to win 2 whole games. So now they are 6-40. So that's nice. They may actually avoid the all-time record after all. They only have to win 3 more games. So, there you go. But that's not why I'm talking Sports Central with you today. A couple days ago was the conference championship games in the NFL, and your Super Bowl 58 matchup is now official. It will be the San Francisco 49ers and the Kansas City Chiefs, or as I call it, Montana Bowl, because Joe Montana was a quarterback for both teams. But anyway, or you could just go Alex Smith Bowl. Either one works. The Chiefs won 17-10. I was watching the game live as it was happening, and I gotta tell you, for a team that looked like they were on a roll, Baltimore fell completely apart at the worst possible time. You had penalties, you had botched plays, you had players getting frustrated, cutting their hands, pounding their hands on the bench, on the sideline, and cutting their hands open. I'm firmly convinced that that's why Zay Flowers had a rough game, because he was getting frustrated, and then pounded his hand and cut his hand open. That's going to leave a mark. But Kansas City's been here before. This is their 6th straight conference championship appearance. You probably should have gone with Kansas City. I know I probably should have gone with Kansas City just based on experience alone. And speaking of experience, the 49ers have also been here before, and this was their 4th conference championship in 5 years. The 49ers will be moving on. Now, the interesting thing about this is that the Lions were up 24-7 at halftime. I mean, I was looking at the score at halftime when I was doing some D&D. Yes, I played the D&D. Well, it's not really D&D. It's more of a tabletop game that's based on the Ninja Turtles universe. But yeah, it has the same mechanics and everything. But I was looking at the score on my phone at halftime while we were chatting, and I'm like, 49ers are done. This is insane. What the hell is going on? And then, of course, I started hearing, the game from the other room as we were trying to have a conversation about, the game and whatnot. And started hearing the crowd cheer louder and louder and louder. I'm like, oh no. Oh no, somebody woke Brock Purdy up, and somebody definitely woke Brock Purdy up. I'm going to pull up the stats here real quick, and I'll tell you how bad. So Brock Purdy only threw for 267 yards, but Christian McCaffrey started running the ball a little bit better, 90 yards. And because of that, the 49ers are now moving on to Super Bowl 58, and they won't have very far to drive or travel, because the game will be in Las Vegas, which is only a 6-hour, 8-hour drive from San Francisco, give or take. But that's pretty much excuse me. That's pretty much the gist of that. Now, there was a lot of talk and a lot of scuttlebutt about the coaching changes going on. Right now, there are only 2 teams left that don't yet have a head coach: the Washington Red Command Team and the Seattle Seahawks. Both teams were targeting 2 coaches in particular, but couldn't interview them until after their respective team seasons are over. And those 2 coaches were Ben Johnson, the offensive coordinator for the Lions, and Mac McDonald. I think it's Mac McDonald. I'm not sure. I know that he's the offensive coordinator for the Baltimore Ravens. And coincidentally, guess who got eliminated this past week? The Lions and the Ravens. So right now, it's looking like both of those coaches will be heavily sought after, except Ben Johnson, announced earlier this morning that he is going to be staying in Detroit. Kind of weird. We're living in a really weird timeline right now. We're having players and coaches not only willingly staying in Detroit, but willingly wanting to go to Detroit. When was the last time that ever happened? I mean, that is just wild. You're having teams, you're having players and coaches willingly wanting to go to Detroit more than they want to go to Dallas. When was the last time that happened? It speaks volumes, the job that Dan Campbell has done in Detroit as the head coach. He has turned that entire organization around. I don't think there is a single head coach in the entire NFL that could have ever possibly done a better job than Dan Campbell. I don't think even Bill Belichick could have turned this thing around as well as Dan Campbell has done. Dan Campbell took a franchise that was routinely losing 14 games a year, flipped it, and basically said, nah, we're not going to be the laughing stock anymore. We're not going to be the punchline to everybody's football jokes anymore. We're going to come in, we're going to bite your kneecaps off, and we're going to punch you in the face in the process. And you're going to take it and you're going to like it. That's been Detroit's mentality for the last 2 years. And it's worked. The Detroit Lions are no longer a joke. The Detroit Lions are no longer, just a punching bag for everybody to just beat up on. They are legit. And between them and the Packers and the Chicago Bears that are probably going to be improving, depending on what they do with the draft, I would say the NFC North is going to be a dogfight for years to come. So that leaves McDonald. Where does he go? Does he go to the Commanders? Does he go to Seahawks? Personally, and I may be a little biased, I didn't grab my Seahawks hat, but I probably would have worn it. I would probably venture a guess that Seattle would be the better opportunity, at least in the short term. Washington right now is in full-on rebuild mode. They've got the number 2 overall draft pick, but they also have $78 million in cap space and not a lot of players currently committed. So there is that to consider. with Seattle, you've got Geno Smith at the quarterback position. You've got a good, healthy, very dangerous receiver core. And you've got a defense that could use some improvement. They've got talent on the defensive side. They just need a little bit of existing coaching, like better coaching. And honestly, whoever they pick as the head coach, I would try my best if I'm the Seahawks, if I'm John Schneider. I would do my best to try and convince Dan Quinn to bail on the Cowboys and go be the defensive coordinator for the Seahawks. Again, I'm speaking from a place of bias when I say that, but at least I'm admitting it. With the Commanders, about the only thing that you've got going for them right now is they've got a new direction, new ownership. Bob Myers as the special counsel or whatever his title is. Yes, I finally remembered his name. And they've got a lot going for them right now. But my guess, if I had to, gun to my head, if I had to say who I think is going to take the Washington job, I think it's going to be Bill Belichick. I think it's going to be Bill Belichick, but I also don't know how much that's going to improve that organization. Keep in mind, ownership wasn't the only problem with the Washington command team, but it was the biggest problem. And now that they've got that problem resolved, they can start working on some of this other stuff. They can work on the coaching. They can work on front office. They can work on, improving their stadium. Practically building a new stadium has got to be priority one at this point, because FedEx Field, from everything I've seen, from everything I've heard, from everything I've read, is a shit show. And I'll get to arenas here in a minute and the shit show that's going on in Vegas. But all the shit that's going on in, Washington, there's a lot of areas that need improvement. And I don't know if a guy like McDonald is going to want to go from an organization that was one game away from the Super Bowl to an organization that's probably 3 years away. So, keeping all of that in mind, I am about to do something that I don't think I ever envisioned doing. And as I pull this up, I'm going to explain what I mean by that. So, there is a lot of shit going on in Las Vegas. And a lot of that shit has to do with the pending move from the Oakland Athletics baseball team. Yes, I'm talking baseball on this podcast, but there's a reason for that. Anyway, so there's a lot of shit going on with the pending move of the Oakland Athletics to Las Vegas. Biggest one right now is they don't have a stadium. Kind of neglected to look at that fine print in the details, didn't you? Yeah, a little bit. Well, one town or one group that is really doing their best, really doing their damnedest to try and expand on the professional sports scene in the region is Utah Jazz owner Ryan Smith. I mentioned last week, or the last time that I did this podcast, that Ryan Smith was basically spearheading an attempt by the state of Utah to have an expansion franchise from the NHL come here. Granted, it's more likely that the Arizona Coyotes are probably going to move here, and they're probably going to be lazy and lame and just call them the Utah Coyotes. But, that's neither here nor there. Well, the same group, led by Ryan Smith, is now spearheading an attempt, seeing an opportunity, that opportunity being right now the Oakland Athletics are currently without a home. They kind of bailed on the town of Oakland prematurely, thinking, oh, it'll be fine. We'll just go to Las Vegas. They'll accept us with open arms, except they don't have a stadium. They don't have a Major League Baseball ready stadium for us. Oh, shit. Because with these stadiums, with these relocation deals, there are three things to consider. 1, market size. 2, how many people are actually going to show up to these games. Because if a professional sports league like the NFL, Major League Baseball, NBA, MLS, if they are going to take a loss to keep a team in a certain town, kind of like how Major League Baseball was taking a loss to keep the Athletics in Oakland, then it's not worth it for them. They have to either relocate or, run the risk of contraction. The third thing that they have to keep in mind is stadium size. Most stadiums in America are minor league stadiums, including the stadium here in Utah, which is Franklin Covey Field, or Smith Parker, whatever it's called these days. The home of the Salt Lake Beast, basically. So a lot of those stadiums are minor league stadiums, so you can't just house a major league team in a AAA stadium. It's just not how that works, because you need to be able to set up TV equipment. You need to be able to set up, high-speed internet. You need to have these things in order to broadcast the games on the MLB network. And right now, all the stadiums in Oakland don't have that ability. So Utah's pressing hard to try and get a stadium set up and ready to go. So then that way they can say, well, we know it's temporary. We know that it's only going to be for a couple of years, but you guys can come here and we will show the world. We will show Major League Baseball. We will show the Atlantas and the Phillies and the Kansas Cities and the Cincinnatis and the Los Angeleses of the world that Utah, that Salt Lake City, Utah, is ready for a major league team. Now, I have had my issues in the past with the people and the government here in the state of Utah, and I still have those same issues. But I do feel like this place, like this state, like this community is Major League Baseball ready. I also feel like this place and this community is NHL ready. We're light years from being NFL ready. I don't think the state of Utah will ever be NFL ready as long as we prioritize religion over government. As long as we prioritize religion over tourism, we're never going to be NFL ready. That's just cold hard fact. But could we potentially support a Major League Baseball team? Yes. I think the community and the state is growing enough to where we could potentially support a Major League Baseball team. We were already doing a really good job with 2 minor league teams. Keep in mind, the Salt Lake Bees is not the only minor league team. The Ogden Raptors are not only one of the best minor league teams in the Mountain West, they're the Pioneer League champions. They're coming into this coming season as the defending Pioneer League champions. Didn't think you'd be hearing me talk about Ogden Raptors baseball now, did ya? So, all of that said, do I think that this plan has viability? Right now, as it stands, I'm not sure. I'm not sure it's, set and ready to go. Do I think they can get it ready to go? I mean, keep in mind, the state of Utah, when push comes to shove, historically has proven that it can do what it's necessary to get something ready for a major league team. Keep in mind how quickly the Delta Center was built back in 1990, 1991. It was almost like that. So Larry Miller was approached by the NBA Board of Governors back in, I think it was like 89 or 90. And basically they told him, look, we like you, we like the Jazz, we like, the state of Utah, but y'all can't be playing the Salt Palace anymore. That's just ridiculous. Build a new stadium by the end of the next season, or we're going to have to force you to relocate or sell the team. And Larry Miller and the Jazz organization, very quickly had the Delta Center built. I think it was the record time for, turnaround as far as from groundbreaking to opening. It was like a 13 or 14 month build from the time that the ground was broken. And for all accounts, I don't care what anybody says. I don't care what anybody on YouTube or anything, I don't care what any of them say. The Delta Center, for a stadium that was built in the 90s, holds up very well in the year 2024. You're not going to find very many stadiums that have the sound acoustics and the ability to amplify crowd noise like the Delta Center. And yeah, acoustics suck for concerts because you're not able to hear the music. But for a basketball stadium, it's pretty remarkable. Now that's the key. That's the key takeaway is back in those days, you could build a basketball stadium separate from a hockey stadium, separate from a football stadium. Nowadays, most teams are going to want multi-purpose stadiums. So right now, what the plan or what the scuttlebutt is in Salt Lake City is right now there's talk of the Utah Jazz either building a new stadium in Daybreak, which is a community, I think it was like 25 miles southwest of downtown Salt Lake, but it's still like within the Salt Lake metropolitan area, or having them temporarily relocate to a different venue while they tear down and completely rebuild Delta Center. Personally, I think that's the better option, because the Delta Center has provided so much business for downtown Salt Lake. But that's just me. But right now, the plan is, regardless of what happens with the Oakland Athletics, regardless of what happens with the Major League Baseball expansion push, right now the plan is for the Smith Group, the Smith ownership group, to build a completely new stadium in the Daybreak area for the Salt Lake Bees. And this stadium is going to be, from what I hear, Major League Baseball ready. So right now they have the Salt Lake Bees, I think like a mile, maybe out, mile and a half, maybe 2 miles south of downtown, playing in the current ball stadium, or the current ballpark. And then they're going to move them once the new stadium is built. If this Oakland Athletics deal goes through and they're able to convince the A's to move officially from Oakland to Salt Lake City temporarily while they get the stadium in Vegas ready to go, then that new ballpark in Daybreak will actually be the home temporarily of the A's while they work things out with the Bees and everything else. My only hope and my only concern is, please don't let it suck nearly as bad as FedEx Field. That's all I ask. But in terms of who else I could see, potentially moving in the next couple of years with Major League Baseball, there's a stadium that's currently being used for the Tampa Bay Rays, and it's called Tropicana Field. Anybody that has been to Tropicana Field knows that it is an absolute dumpster. Nobody likes going there. Nobody likes going to Rays games there. And from the sounds of it, it looks like they realize this and they're getting ready to either move or build a new stadium. Right now, the state of Florida is trying to figure out, what new stadiums they're going to build. Because not only do they have the Rays situation that they have to worry about, they have the Jacksonville Jaguars situation to worry about. There's a very real possibility the Jaguars could relocate. And if they end up relocating, there's talk that they could relocate to either Memphis or to London. And considering the logistical nightmare that London would present, my guess would be Memphis would be the more accurate or at least viable option of the two. Personally, I think they somehow find a way to get a new stadium for the Jaguars, just like I think they'll find a way to get a new stadium for the Rays. I don't see the Rays moving, and I don't see the Jaguars moving. I don't see too many billionaires leaving Florida, considering the tax breaks and everything that billionaires can get while doing business in Florida. I mean, why do you think guys like Elon Musk and Jeff Bezos are moving to Florida? All things considered, and that is probably going to be the first, last, and only time I will ever talk baseball on this podcast, because I honestly don't care about baseball. I honestly don't care about Major League Baseball or about, who's The only times that I care about Major League Baseball is when it comes time for the World Series. And then I'm mildly interested. Like the one year when the Chicago Cubs actually won. It's like, oh, the Cubs are in. Oh, they won. Okay, that's pretty cool. Baseball lost me when, they had the whole steroid thing, and then they allowed a known roid user like Barry Bonds to break the all-time home run record. Like at that point, I basically just gave up. Because we're willing to justify and worship a known cheater and a known, criminal to be the lead home run hitter. No. I do not recognize Barry Bonds. I do not recognize Mark McGwire. I do not recognize Sammy Sosa. I do not recognize any of them. To me, Hank Aaron is still the home run king. You can call me an old head. You can call me whatever you want. But the fact of the matter is that I do not acknowledge or recognize anyone from the steroid era. Plain and simple. So, that is my hot take on Major League Baseball. My first, my last, and my only. Hope you enjoyed it. If you did enjoy it, then leave a review on Spotify. Like, share, and comment the video on Facebook. If you're watching this on YouTube, like the video, subscribe to the channel, and hit the bell for notifications. That way you are notified with whatever updates are going on. I'll probably drop another video sometime tomorrow, depending on what my schedule looks like. If not tomorrow, then Thursday. But hope you guys take care. Hope you guys are having an awesome January. And yeah, that's it. Remember to include your closing tax. Thank you.